The 7th Sky Corps was one of the Grand Army of the Republic's most legendary clone units. Commander Cody and his men served under the legendary General Kenobi himself, and were instrumental in Republic victories in battles as crucial as those on Ryloth, Geonosis, Umbara, and Utapau. Most Clone Wars fans are quite familiar with them, but what you might not be familiar with is their backstory. You see, the 7th Sky Corps was the legacy of another famed Republic military unit, one that was the pride of the Republic Army for 10,000 years, the Rocket Jumpers. In this video, we're going to be telling their story.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The 7th Sky Corps, the parent unit of the 212th Attack Battalion, had Sky in its name for a reason. The Corps was intended for air-to-ground assaults, usually to clear landing areas for other GAR units. What this meant depended on the battle. On Ryloth, for example, the 7th Sky Corps Ghost Company dropped onto the city of Nabat in gunships, flying down under heavy fire and leaping out guns blazing. But some units in the 7th, like the 2nd Airborne Company, were much more direct. Much of the 7th Sky Corps was composed of specialized clone paratroopers. These clones would drop onto enemy targets using jetpacks or specialized parachutes and lay waste to them, while the rest of the army deployed nearby, causing chaos behind enemy lines. There were a number of clone units that excelled at using those sorts of tactics, but the 7th Sky Corps was considered the premier unit for that kind of mission profiles, as its paratroopers were the best of the best. As the Clone Wars went on, many non-paratroopers in the 7th began adopting tactics and equipment from the paratroopers, so as to be able to serve alongside them more effectively. Commander Cody, for example, incorporated a small jetpack into his Phase 2 armor. Aerial tactics like those of the 7th Sky Corps became quite popular among Republic tacticians during the Outer Rim sieges, which is why the 7th spent virtually the entire 6-month campaign on the front lines. Under the command of famous Jedi duo Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and in tandem with the 501st Legion, the 7th Sky Corps served as a vanguard of Republic armies in siege after siege. Their lightning attacks brought down even the most resilient separatist defenses, and they proved instrumental in the capture of worlds at the very heart of the Confederacy. The 7th Sky Corps, and clone units like it, struck terror into the hearts of the Republic's enemies. This wasn't just because they were extremely effective, however, rather it was because their tactics recalled those of the old Republic army at its height. The 7th made separatists think back to the days of the old Sith Wars, when the enemies of the Republic were crushed by precisely these sorts of soldiers. They were thinking, of course, about the Rocket Jumpers, the pride and joy of the old army. The Rocket Jumper elite advance units were the symbol of the Republic military back in the day, and it's no wonder why the Kaminoans designed units like the 7th Sky Corps in emulation of them. They were essentially like orbital drop shock troopers from the Halo franchise. They would drop from orbit into embattled worlds, landing right on top of the enemy and opening fire. There was one major difference between them and the heli jumpers, however, they didn't bother with silly old-fashioned bits of tech like drop pods. No, the rocket jumpers leapt out of their ships with only jetpacks to keep them from splattering when they hit the surface. In fairness, those weren't the small flimsy jetpacks used by the likes of the Mandalorians. The rocket jumpers used Zim system personal rocket packs, which had 4 sizable thrusters and were about 5 times the size of conventional jetpacks. They were also equipped with top-of-the-line armor and blaster weaponry, as well as a healthy supply of grenades. The rocket jumpers were the best of the Republic Army. Only proven army veterans were allowed to apply to join the rocket jumpers, and of those who applied, only 8% ultimately got the chance to join the army's elite. The result was a highly skilled and very tight-knit group, known for their bizarre traditions and off-duty practices as much as they were for their effectiveness. They were known to perform elaborate stunts when not on duty, and to regularly get in fights with each other. So much so that cities that hosted rocket jumper units were avoided by travelers for fear of getting caught up in their shenanigans. On the battlefield, however, the rocket jumpers were the epitome of military professionalism. They were both disciplined and dedicated, rarely refusing to carry out orders and loyal to the Republic above all else. They were expected to complete their mission objectives or die trying, and most rocket jumpers were committed to never surrendering or admitting defeat, even when command considered it acceptable. When they went to battle, they expected to head back home either victorious or in a body bag. To them, any other option was for lesser soldiers. In most battles, the rocket jumpers carried out the same missions that the 7th Sky Corps would later become known for. They would launch rapid assaults on hardened enemy targets from the stratosphere, using their jetpacks as an advantage and either destroying enemy positions or softening them up until the rest of the army arrived. But they had 3 other mission profiles as well: clearing beachheads, providing reconnaissance, and special ops missions. The rocket jumpers were an advanced force, and sometimes they were deployed before the bulk of the Republic military even arrived in system. When this happened, their job was to clear out a beachhead for the army's use and hold the line until reinforcements showed up. They were also frequently deployed on reconnaissance missions, as their expertise with jetpacks make them ideal for flying around and getting a good look at enemy positions. Naturally, they excelled at both these jobs, and as a result they ended up getting assigned some spicier missions over the years as well, including VIP extractions and lightning assaults on specific targets like weapon emplacements. The Republic rocket jumpers, as with a lot of the other trademark features of the Republic military, came into being during the Pius Dea Crusades. They were founded in 11,000 BBY following advances in jetpack technology, a time in which the Republic was ruled by the vicious Pius Dea cult. For centuries, the Pius Dea had used the Republic military to wage war against the alien species of the Outer Rim, and the rocket jumpers no doubt were created as yet another way to unleash death and destruction upon innocent non-humans. But the first rocket jumper units ended up being overwhelmingly composed of renunciates, members of a secret heresy within the Pius Dea cult that the Commissi and the Jedi Order had engineered. In 10,967 BBY, the renunciates rebelled against the Pius Dea government, and together with the Commissi, the Jedi Order, and Al-Sakini separatists, they eventually brought the Pius Dea down and excised them from Republic government. The rocket jumpers were instrumental in the downfall of the Pius Dea, as almost all of them sided with the Jedi. They fought in a number of crucial battles during the Renunciation, including the Battle of Ord Karida, a crucial victory for the Renunciates. Over the course of the next 10,000 years, the rocket jumpers proved themselves again and again on the battlefield, crushing threats to the Republic when military force was necessary. The rocket jumpers led the charge during the Waymansee Storm, the Second Herglic Feud, the Gank Massacres, the Kaseya border conflict, the Great Droid Revolution, the Beast Wars of Onderon, and the Freedom Nad Uprising, turning potential Republic defeats into resounding victories wherever they went. Their reputation grew to the point where just the threat of rocket jumpers would convince the enemies of the Republic to give negotiation another try. Rocket jumpers were most well known for their role in old Sith Wars. During the Great Sith War, in which Sith forces led by Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma cut a bloody swath across the Republic, the rocket jumpers led counteroffensives against the Sith and their allies, the Krath and the Mandalorian Crusaders. Their bravery and skill played a major role in stopping the advance of the Sith during that war, which ultimately ended in a Republic victory. The Great Sith War was where the rocket jumpers peaked, however. They didn't fare nearly as well in the Mandalorian Wars, in which the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders adopted their tactics and improved upon them greatly. The unit was nearly wiped out fighting on the front lines against the Mandalorians, and the rocket jumpers never truly recovered. They played much smaller roles in the Jedi Civil War and the Great Galactic War, after which they continued to atrophy until the new Sith Wars. That millennium-long conflict nearly destroyed the Republic, and after its conclusion the Republic underwent the Ruusan Reformations, which were intended to prevent the Republic from coming that close to collapse ever again. As part of the Ruusan Reformations, the Republic military was dissolved, including the Republic military and the Republic army. The rocket jumpers ceased to exist, that is, until the Grand Army of the Republic followed in their footsteps 1,000 years later. So that's the story of the Republic rocket jumpers, the ancestors of the 7th Sky Corps. But what do you think? Do you want to hear more about the history of the Republic? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments below.